on the Wado Radio Show.
Of course, it's DJ Wado. It's the Wado Radio Show. It's more than music. It's ministry. WadoRadio.com online, man. And I got a special guest. Been following this dude for quite some time. Pastor, philanthropist, blogger, author, father. He's wearing a lot of titles, a lot of hats, man. But I got Shaun King on the line with me. Shaun, what's up, bro?
Hey, man, it's super good to talk with you, man. I'm glad we could finally connect.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. I felt like this was kind of a good space because you just released your new book, man. First book, Simon and Schuster. The book is called The Power of 100. And, man, I'm just excited to talk to you about that and just, man, what's been going on with you the past few years, bro?
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. And man, writing that book was so much harder than I've read. Reading a book is easy. Writing a book is so hard, man. And man, I've been blogging and writing. I love writing.
Yeah.
But writing a book was way harder. At least writing a good book is a hard thing. I mean, it took forever to write it, and then it's hilarious because when I finished writing it, I was like amped. I wrote this glorious Facebook post thanking everybody, and then the editing process with the publisher started. I kid you not, the editing process was even more brutal than writing the book. It was it was almost like writing another book.
Wow.
I mean, it was going over every page and every detail, and I can't believe I've done some hard stuff in life. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I didn't see that coming.
Wow.
And so now that it's out and people can read it and hopefully benefit and grow from it, I'm amped.
That's good.
For sure,
That's
man.
Good. Well, let me ask you this before we dive into the concept and all of that. Do you see yourself writing another book?
Yeah, it's one of those things, man. Like for instance, I climbed. There's this huge mountain outside of Seattle, Mount Rainier.
Okay.
And you can see it. You can see it. Yeah, you can see it from the city, but it's actually like 100 miles away. And I climbed Mount Rainier, trained for months to do it, and it just chewed me up and spit me out. Literally, when I finished the climb, I was like bruised up, could hardly walk. And I kid you not, I got in the car. I told my wife and kids, like, listen, I'm never climbing another mountain again. And then like a month later, when my body healed and I didn't feel the pain anymore, I was like, man, I can't wait to climb a mountain again. And that's how it is with the book, like when I finally finished the editing process and all that, I was like, well, that was just not worth it. I'm never doing that again. And now that the pain is worn off, I'm already mapping out my next book and sketching it out. And so yeah, I'm definitely going to keep writing, but it's a serious process for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it, man. So let's talk about the overall concept of this book, man. The Power of 100.
Yeah, it's a few things that are big for me in the book. One, I tried to write something that's not already out there, and I'm at a point in life, and I bet a bunch of your listeners are at the same point where I just don't have time to read what I already know. And I mean, sometimes it's great to get reinforcement and that type of thing. But I'm at a point now where I read a book, I need to get some lessons out of it, and it needs to help me in a real practical way. And in a lot of ways, I tried to write a book that would help me. And I have a incredibly busy, demanding, complicated life with 4 beautiful kids, but my kids are in elementary school, middle school, and high school. I have a great marriage, but to keep it great, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
I normally have 2 or 3 jobs and then 2 or 3 charitable ventures that I'm a part of at any given point in time. I tried to write a book that would help me sort through the busyness of my life and actually make my own life better. And as I wrote it, that I had my messy life in mind. And, the idea is a simple one. It's that more than ever, we are so focused on right now, what we have to say right now, what we have to hear right now, that most people, and I've coached thousands of people from all walks of life, most people no longer have a macro view of their life. It's hard to think beyond today, and it's really hard to think beyond this week, and people are really struggling thinking beyond this month, and almost nobody thinks beyond this year. And it hasn't always been that way, and it's really difficult when you can't think beyond today or this week or this month. It's really difficult to accomplish stuff that matters in your life and in the world. And I'm trying to help people, and say the power of 100, I'm trying to help people set 100 life goals in 7 different areas of their lives, ranging from your financial goals, your health and fitness goals, travel goals, and things like that. And so people say, 100, this is way too much. But when you break them down and say, hey, I want you to create 10 financial goals. And in the book, I teach a system that helps you build momentum.
Wow.
Because what people are doing, man, is I get people all the time, I say, what's your dream? And they say, well, I want to produce an Oscar-winning documentary. And that's great. Let's keep that one, and let's make that a goal. But they don't know where to start. And so what I've taught in the book, and I would teach anybody freely. Here's something most people don't know. When you buy the book now, I don't get paid when you buy the book. I got paid when I wrote it. And so the cool thing about pitching it and saying, hey, go buy it, is I want people to buy it now because I want them to have the material, not because I get rich when you buy it.
Yeah.
But I have people first create goals that they can achieve this month in each of those 7 categories, and they're super achievable goals. And the key is to just get a victory, to just get a win in your life. And that victory helps you build momentum to something that's a little bit bigger, that'll probably take you 3 to 6 months to do.
Yeah.
And then you've already set 2 goals in each category. And then beyond that, I have helped people create a goal that'll probably take them all year to accomplish. But then when you accomplish that goal, it's going to build momentum to something that's probably going to take you 3 to 5 years to do. And then, that might be get a PhD. It might take you 5 years to get a PhD.
Right.
Well, before you get a PhD, you have to take the GRE, which may be your 6-month goal. And so I try to help people build goals and create goals that build momentum in their life. And before you know it, you're accomplishing things in all types of areas. And I've been helping people do that privately for years. And the book really just teaches those lessons, man.
You know what's interesting, man, is as I first heard about you when you were launching the church plant in Atlanta, Courageous, and I've seen you build so much momentum very quickly for a number of different projects, and always been impressed by that. So when I saw that you were writing this book and just doing a little research about it, I said, man, who better to talk about building momentum, achieving goals, that type of thing, than someone who's done, a lot in a relatively short period of time, with many of the different ventures that you've been a part of.
Yeah, for me, let me tell you a big failure that I had. There were a couple years ago, man, it's probably 4 years ago now. I had launched several online microsites designed to raise money for charities.
Oh,
and
yeah, Hope Mob. Hope Mob was one of those.
Yeah. Hope Mob, where we did something for Haiti called A Home in Haiti,
yes.
And then we did something for kids in Atlanta that we called 500 Toys, and so we were launching these micro projects, and this was before online giving and online fundraising was a big deal.
Yep.
And so people saw it, and 2 different charities said, "Hey, we want to pay you to help us do what you've done." And so I said yes, and I taught them everything that I did. And both charities, both of the projects they did, flopped. Like I taught them everything I thought, and it didn't work for either one. And one of the guys at the charity, at one of the charities, he was actually like really angry. Like he told me, he was like, "Listen, I'm convinced that you deliberately held something back."
Wow.
And I kid you not, man. I was just stumped. I couldn't figure it out. And I realized then that I taught them everything that I did, which would work for me, but they didn't have an audience. So in essence, I taught them how to do something great to an empty auditorium. And I just hadn't taken the time to realize that even though they built everything just the way I built it and they messaged it just the way I would do it, they didn't have an audience to tell this story to, and so it didn't work. And that failure, I mean, it was a big flop, and I mean, I was stumped by it and frustrated by it. It caused me to take a step back and not just think about how I coach people to launch projects, but it caused me, when I just coach people through everyday life, to say, how can I teach principles that will work for people no matter who they are? And that's what this book does. Like you don't have to have you don't have to be anything like me at all for the principles and lessons in this book to work for you. And it took me a while to get that, you know. Like I don't compare myself to like Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson, but if you think about a lot of your favorite athletes, normally they're terrible coaches. And I started out as a terrible coach, and it was through being a bad coach for a while that I really learned, okay, I need to readjust how I teach people things that will work for them. Because everything that works for you might not work for me, but I think I've gotten my mojo right with how to teach people lessons that'll work for them.
Yeah. I remember when you had started your church, and then, you know, you were getting a lot of momentum, and, you know, I knew a lot of people in Atlanta, and they were just like, yeah, man, like this guy is really doing his thing down there. And then I remember when you posted that email on your blog about basically, you know, retiring and stepping away, man. What were some of the biggest things that you learned even from that experience? Because I felt like, you know, a young guy such as yourself, like, it took a lot of maturity to, you know, to kind of do something like that.
You know, man, there might have been a little bit of maturity in there, but that was a really difficult point in my life. Probably, if I were to look back over the past 7 or 8 years, that was probably a low point for me, man,
Sure.
Where I honestly thought that I would be pastoring Courageous Church for the rest of my life. Like, that's what I imagined. That's what I wanted to do. I dreamed of starting that church and pastoring that church. I dreamed that for 10 years. When I first moved to Atlanta to go to Morehouse, I started thinking right then about a church that ministers to people in the city, downtown. I love the city, and I just didn't see anything like it in the city. And so for 10 years, I dreamed about it all the time. It's what I wanted to do. It's who I wanted to be. It's who I really felt God had prepared me to be. And I made a huge mistake. I kid you not. The first week I pastored the church, and I learned such a huge lesson from that mistake because I couldn't fix it. So our church, the first week of our church, we had almost 1,000 people attending our church after the first week.
Wow!
And I felt like, from my interpretation of Scripture, and I felt like God had inspired me to start a church that still appreciated Sunday worship services, but that Sunday was not our main thing, and that we were more about serving 7 days a week, making a real impact in people's lives. And Sunday would be where we come to celebrate what we've seen God do. And after that very first service, where we had almost 1,000 people there, I immediately became the pastor that I told myself I wasn't going to be, where almost everything about our church became preparing for Sunday. And we did Sunday really well. But I lost touch with what I felt like we were supposed to do. And so about a year and a half into the church, I really started trying to take the church back to where I thought we were supposed to be in the beginning. And it just didn't work. And some of our key leaders left, and other people said, "Hey, if you don't take it back, we're gonna basically take over the church, or we're gonna ask you to resign." And so I was in like a terrible emotional space where I learned a lesson that I think applies to everyone listening now. The lesson is, however it is you want to be next year, 5 years from now, next month, be that right now. Because the energy it takes to change your mind and say like I did 18 months later, "Hey, everybody, I actually want us to go in this completely different direction," it just didn't work. Because here's the thing. We attracted a lot of people who wanted the thing that we were pitching, which was Sunday service. And when I tried to change that up, it failed in a lot of ways. And so I stepped down, and it took me a while to learn that lesson that, if your goal is to be a certain type of person, a certain type of pastor, a certain type of leader, a certain type of author, whatever it is, if you really are wanting to project a certain type of style or leadership, do it right now. Don't say I'm going to ease my way into it. Just be that right now. There's nobody stopping you. And that's the mistake I made. I wish, like some people say they have no regrets, but I do. I wish I could go back and change the way we did some things in the beginning, because I miss it actually, and just wish that I had not made that kind of early error that I feel like I couldn't recover from. And I feel like now it's been almost 3 years since I stepped down from my role in the church. With the wisdom that I've gained even over these past 3 years, I probably wouldn't even step down today. I would have tried to weather the storm and take my time a little more. But back then, I thought it was the best thing, and I did my best. But it wasn't my best, but it was the best I knew at the time.
I was gonna ask you that, man. Because it seemed like it was a genuine call for you to pastor. You know what I'm saying? Just, someone on the outside looking in and even hearing you talk about it, and, something you dreamed about for so long. And I'm just like, man, maybe, I don't know. I mean, could you see yourself pastoring again? Let me phrase it better. Is that one of your life goals right now?
Well, no, it's not. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you asked it like that. It's not. It's not one of my life goals, and I definitely don't have any plans of going back. And it took my family through a lot of emotions, and like for instance, I'm actually, even though I'm really public on Twitter and those types of things, I'm actually like a really, really private guy. I only have a handful of close friends. I'm really a hermit. I love my family, my wife and kids, and I don't leave home very much.
Yeah.
But my wife is completely different. She's a social butterfly, and in our church, she had made so many great friends, and my kids had made so many great friends. And when I step down, when you leave a church, some people only. A lot of my wife's friends, she just couldn't be friends with them after we left. It was emotional for people. It was stressful for people. And so when I stepped down, it caused a lot of difficulty with my wife and my kids. And, you know, it was hard, man. Even I don't say you shouldn't do it because it's hard, because lots of great things are hard. But there's some aspects of ministry and pastoring that are needlessly difficult. And, you know, I didn't even see those things. I've been an assistant pastor at several churches and on the staff of several churches. And, but I just didn't see a lot of what a lead pastor dealt with. And, it was really stressful for my family. My wife has told me that if I pastored again, that I'd have to get a new wife.
Oh man! So yeah, that's not on the life goals. That's all you had to say.
Yeah, but obviously I'm not getting a new wife, and she tell me she knows if we felt we were really called for it, that we would do it. But I don't know. I feel like there's such a cultural box of what it means to be a pastor and what it means to have a church in America, that when you try to do anything outside of that box, and listen, man, I'm not even saying the box is wrong, but when you try to do Christianity in a way that is decidedly different than the way most people do it in America, it gets a lot of ridicule, and most people reject it.
Yeah.
Like I said, one of the things I preached this message for 6 weeks, and this was right before we made this. I said we were going to make this huge shift in our church where we were going to really change the way we did things. And here's another lesson I learned. People love to hear about change.
But they don't want to change.
And they love to hear about it.
Yeah.
But hearing about it and doing it are completely different, man. And so our attendance was like the highest it had ever been. Our giving was the highest it had ever been as I was talking about these big changes we were going to make. And I was preaching this idea that, hey, if you look at the Gospels, Jesus was rarely in a synagogue. There are only a few instances where he's ever inside of a building somewhere.
Yep.
He is mainly out of the building with people doing ministry. I said, listen, it sounds simple, you and I talking. I said, listen, let's just be like that. And people loved hearing that idea. And then I said, listen, so what we're going to do, we're going to stop meeting every Sunday. We're just going to meet one Sunday a month. And we're going to use the other Sundays to do other things. And we'll use our other time to do other stuff. And we'll meet in homes, and we'll serve in ways that look like the Bible. And people loved hearing about it. And then when we actually made this shift, it just didn't work. People hated it. People started going to other churches on the Sundays we didn't have service, and they just said, listen, we like the theory of what you were saying, but it's just not really that's not how we want to do our Christianity. And in America, being a Christian, by and large, means, do you go to church on Sunday?
Yep.
And I'm not saying that that's not a part of Christianity, but in America, that's pretty much the bulk of Christianity. And I'm convinced now that it is almost impossible when you try to tinker with that model. It's almost impossible in America because the culture is so strong. So you'll see guys, be it like Francis Chan or others who said, you know what, let's do this differently. And guys that are way more influential than I ever was, and it just didn't work for them either. And so I think a lot of people, myself included, are saying, how can how can I do ministry and serve God, but do it outside of what we know church to be?
Sure.
You know, so I'm thinking through some other ways, like ways to build community online and things like that. But yeah, I don't know that I would ever do traditional church again. We attend church and visit churches and things like that, but I don't know that I would pastor again like I did.
Sure. No, I get that, brother. I definitely understand that, man. Walk us through, man. I know you kind of had this period. Obviously, you were a pastor. Then, you were really into, that the Haiti project you mentioned, and Hope Mob, and kind of several other online crowdsourcing type ventures. And then, boom, you pop up one of the main guys with this Ferguson coverage online. And when I first kind of saw you tweeting about a lot of this stuff, I was just like, wow, like, okay, it's like this is another chapter, another page in the Shaun King book, man.
Yeah, justice has always been a huge part of my life. I don't even know if you know this about me, man, but when I was 15, I grew up in rural Kentucky.
Yep.
And when I was 15, I went to we only had one high school in my town, and I had been harassed. Like, racism was huge in our town, like for forever. Like, literally, before I was born, people were lynched in our town. And like, there's a book like on the history of lynching in Kentucky, and it tells you every lynching that happened in every city and town. And so racism had always been really real in the town I grew up in. But when I was a little kid, it never really affected me. It never hit me, and I didn't deal with it very much. And it got a little worse in middle school. When I got to high school, man, it was super real. I mean, I had to like defend myself in fights all the time. My freshman year, I had a guy one time throw a jar of tobacco spit in my face. I kid you not, in school. I mean, it just had tobacco spit all over my clothes. I just literally just left the school and walked home, you know. And, I mean, we were called every name you could imagine. And so my sophomore year, in school, I was assaulted by this group of guys. We called them rednecks back then, but assaulted by this group of guys. And I was beaten so badly, I missed all of my sophomore and all of my junior year of high school. And I had 3 spinal surgeries. I had fractures in my face. And it changed my life. It changed everything about how I saw myself.
Man.
And it took me almost 2 years to recover from those injuries. And it was brutal, man. And, I was not just wounded physically, but emotionally as well. And when I finally recovered, I had in me a really deep bent to issues of justice, particularly around racism and discrimination. And so I was 17, and I moved to Atlanta to go to Morehouse. And Morehouse teaches you to lead in that area. Dr. King went to Morehouse. Lots of really amazing, like, grassroots civil rights leaders went to Morehouse as well, and bold men who've done great things came through here. I'm actually speaking from here now, and bold people came through here, and for me, justice became just a part of who I was. It was a part of my story, and I've always tried to stand up when I could for issues that mattered. But I think, like a lot of people, the death of Trayvon Martin just hit me super hard.
Yeah.
And I hear that same story over and over and over and over. There's so many things, like every single one of us can remember a time where we walked home from a store with some snacks. And like Trayvon's story was just real to me because I grew up with a single mother. I was regularly just kind of out walking on my own, and we moved all the time, so we were always in new neighborhoods. And this idea of this young brother walking to the store and just walking back with some Skittles and a drink, and somebody immediately profiles him as a thug and as a criminal and tracks him down and confronts him, it affected me in a deep way, man. And I have a son, and now I'm seeing him, from the eyes of a father, and it just got me, man. I became real obsessed with that case and justice for that case. And like a lot of people, I was just really crushed when George Zimmerman was found not guilty of every charge. I just thought it was preposterous.
Yeah.
And then after that, you would hear more and more names of young men and women who were killed by police or by citizens, like Jordan Davis, who was killed by a man for turning his music up too loud and a confrontation ensued. Or there's a brother in Pasadena named Kendrick McDade, who was a high school All-American and a college athlete, and police profiled him and thought he was somebody he wasn't and killed him. But then what really got me, man, was Eric Garner, actually. And Eric Garner was killed in July. And I saw this man who was a father and a grandfather who just seemed to be exasperated that he was even confronted by police that day. And then I saw something I had never seen in my life. I saw a man get killed on YouTube. And it just affected me, man. And I became all in when I saw the death of Eric Garner, and I was so convinced that someone was going to be convicted for that. I knew, okay, here is a case where someone will be convicted. And I kid you not, I was literally tweeting about Eric Garner when someone called me and told me, "Hey, Shaun, I'm in St. Louis, and there's something really crazy going on in a town called Ferguson. It's on the news here locally."
Wow.
And I'd never even heard of Ferguson before.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, I was literally writing a tweet about Eric Garner when someone called me and said, something bad has happened here. And from that moment forward, I haven't stopped, man. From the case of, literally the day after I learned about Mike Brown, I learned about John Crawford. They were actually just killed a day apart from each other.
Yeah.
And since then, there have been so many cases, be it Tamir Rice in Cleveland or a young brother, Kai Gurley in Brooklyn, and so many awful stories. And so now it's crazy because a lot of people see me as the guy who talks about issues of justice, but I see it as a way to use my platform to connect with people and to tell these stories. And in the midst of all that, I got hired as a writer for a news website, Daily Coast.
Yep.
So I write 1 or 2 stories a day for them, and I'm thankful for the opportunity they've given me. And so my primary topics with them are issues of race and justice, and so I try to track these issues very closely. And for me, I still see it as a part of my faith, even though I don't talk about it so much privately. I feel like our God is a God of justice, and when I stand up for justice, I do it because I feel like it's the righteous thing to do. And while a lot of American Christians don't get that, it's where it comes from for me. And so when I do it, I feel like standing up for people who've been wronged, for people who've been harassed, and the way we see issues of police brutality and other things. I feel like God is behind, particularly if you're careful in the way you advocate for justice. I feel like God is with it, and that it aligns with Scripture.
Yeah. Let me I want to give you a couple rapid fire questions just about some of these topics. And I love hearing your heart and your passion about this because this kind of this Christian hip hop community that I've been a part of. We have so many people with many different perspectives, backgrounds, races, all of that stuff. And so you have a contingent of people that are like, man, they probably feel very similar to how you and I feel about these issues, very passionate, outraged at the justice. And then you have some people that may feel the same way as some of your detractors. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That are like, man, you guys shouldn't be talking about this, yada yada yada. So man, just with that in mind, I know one of the blogs that you wrote recently, within the last 2 weeks was, and you've actually written a couple about this, I believe, around the lawsuit that one of the jurors filed out in Ferguson, against the DA, man, and just talk a bit about the significance of that, man.
Yeah, man, I have so many strong feelings, man, and for even I try to break it down even in the most basic level for some of your listeners who aren't as obsessed with the case as I am. Like, I feel like the case of Mike Brown being killed by Officer Darren Wilson, that it should have gone to a jury. And it's been said 1,000 times now, and it's true. People will tell you that a district attorney can indict a ham sandwich, is the saying, is that whenever a DA or lead prosecutor presents a case to a grand jury, they can get the grand jury to indict pretty much whoever they want. As a matter of fact, in most studies, it has found that 99% of the time, a grand jury indicts the person who is brought up by the prosecutor. It's like 99.8% of the time. And that's because, by and large, a prosecutor doesn't bring a case if he or she doesn't think it deserves to go to trial. And I'm not convinced, and I've said this from the beginning, I'm not convinced one way or the other that had Darren Wilson, the Ferguson police officer who shot and killed Mike Brown, I'm not convinced had it gone to trial that he would or would not have been found guilty. I just don't know. But having studied the evidence, and the prosecutor, Bob McCullough, released over 7,000 pages of evidence, and I've skimmed or read almost every page of that. And there were so many reasons from good quality people who were there, who saw what they saw, so many reasons why it should have gone to trial. And quality men and women with integrity who believed they saw Darren Wilson kill Mike Brown in a way that violated the law. And then there were some people there who weren't sure what they saw, and there were some people there who said what they saw, they thought Mike Brown was in the wrong. And for me, that's what eyewitnesses are about. You take that to trial and let it all come out. But Prosecutor Bob McCullough, he did some crazy things that are unprecedented. And I've spoken to so many, I've even spoken to former judges and attorneys. He admitted after the case that he knew some witnesses were lying.
Yeah,
and that
I saw that radio interview. That was that. I was like, he should be brought on charges after I saw that.
He in that radio interview, and I was told by somebody who works. He did that radio interview after me and others were going really hard about this witness named Sandy McElroy. That's her real name.
Yep.
And they call her witness number 40.
Number 40.
And she was the only witness of 85 witnesses. She's the only one who lied about ever even being there. Some witnesses said they saw things that they may not have seen so well, or they recalled them a certain way. She was the only witness who created an entire fabricated story about even being there. As a matter of fact, she's never even been to Canfield Drive where Mike Brown was killed in. she did an interview with the FBI before she was ever called to the grand jury, and they just destroyed her in the interview. And the DA had that information, and he said in that interview, that radio interview, he said he knew she wasn't there.
Yeah, wow.
But he called her anyway. And they didn't just call her once, they called her twice. And that's actually against the law. That when you know a juror, when you know a witness, rather, is going to perjure themselves, and you call them anyways with that knowledge, it's against the law. And so something crazy happened. Something that has almost never happened. Literally, I've only found one instance in all of history, and it's not even quite the same, of where someone on the jury filed a lawsuit against the DA. Because normally when you serve on a jury, when it's done, you just want to be done with it.
Right.
and one of the jurors filed a lawsuit against Bob McCullough and said very clearly, they had 58 points in their lawsuit that they said, here are 58 things that Bob McCullough did that were wrong. And the biggest one was that when he came out in his press conference after the grand jury voted for no indictment, Bob McCullough did not say and did not infer that many people on the grand jury did vote for an indictment. And this grand juror said in their lawsuit, hey, I wanted an indictment. I wanted this to go to a jury. And but Bob McCullough never referenced that. And then the second thing that the lawsuit said was that it appeared the entire time that it was Mike Brown that was being tried and not Darren Wilson. And they gave example after example of that. And they just said, and now, and the grand juror who filed the lawsuit said, what's completely unfair is that it is illegal for the grand jury to talk about the case while Bob McCullough can be out misrepresenting what really happened. And so it shocked me when it happened. Like, I didn't see it coming. I knew nothing about it. And I just literally opened up Twitter one day and saw that someone from the jury was suing the prosecutor. And here's my point for people who may not agree. Like, there are genuine people, good people, who've looked at it and said, I think Mike Brown did something flagrant. And even if you feel that way, what I'm saying is you will have an impossible time finding one person, conservative or liberal, who feels like the prosecutor did a good job managing this case and violated all types of protocol and ended up making a lot of bad decisions that really could have been avoided.
Yeah. Tamir Rice, man, you did a very thorough, just kind of play by play of everything that happened that day, from, the police rolling up, the phone call, the relay to the dispatch relay, his sister being detained, what happened with his mother, and that whole piece, man. What do you think is going to happen with this case?
Well, so first, let me be honest with you. Like, I'm an eternal optimist, and I am normally the last guy who predicts bad news. But I'll be completely honest with you. I've gotten to a point where it is so rare for people. See, we can debate about the case of Darren Wilson and Mike Brown, but this case of Tamir Rice, who was a 12-year-old who was shot and killed in Cleveland by police, and the Cleveland police are now under a sweeping regulation from the Department of Justice.
Yeah, I saw that.
For dozens and dozens of cases that the DOJ said were clear cases of police brutality, ranging from people being wrongly killed to wrongly beaten to wrongly accused. And the Department of Justice said there is an illegal pattern of unconstitutional behavior. And I think that the killing of Tamir Rice fits that bill. And it's devastating on so many reasons because he wasn't breaking the law. He wasn't doing anything illegal whatsoever. He literally was at a park directly across the street from his house. His sister was his 14-year-old sister was at the park with him, and they used that park like their front yard. They had a playground, swing sets. There was a rec center that they would go in and out of to play in and use the bathroom and stuff like that. And so that park was so close to their home that they kind of used it like their front yard, and they just go over there and hang out.
Yep.
Almost every day.
Every day.
And so he's over there.
Like I know I had a park literally right across the street where I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. It was an elementary school.
So you were, because I had a place like that too.
Yep.
Like it was kind of like when you had a park in your neighborhood.
Yep.
You saw the park as your park.
Yep.
And you didn't see it as like a place where you were a visitor. It was like your domain.
No, that's your spot.
And
yep.
Yeah, and so he's over there, and he has this, air pistol that he's playing with. He had never had it in the house before. Tragically, a friend of his gave it to him to play around with. And he was just goofing off with it. And he had no idea that anybody was watching him or calling the police or anything like that. He was over there by himself, and his sister is over there talking to friends and stuff like that. She's a teenager. And a police officer, 911 is called. Police roll up, and I've studied these videos, within milliseconds. Within about 1.2 seconds of the officer opening his door, he shot and killed Tamir Rice right there. And the police lied. And I say this as someone who wants to be as balanced as someone could be. I think the police didn't know that there was a camera on a building there, because the police put out their report, which told at least 5 blatant lies about what happened. They said that in the report, they said Tamir was at a table with several guys, but he was by himself. In the report, they said he pulled out the gun and brandished it. But you can watch the video, and he never does such a thing.
Never did it. Yep.
Yeah, never did it. And in the report and in a press conference, they said, "Hey, this gun that he had, it didn't have the neon tip on it." But the police never saw the gun to tell if it had a neon tip or not. It ended up it didn't. But they didn't know that when they killed him. The gun was tucked away somewhere. They never saw it, and you could see it as clear as day on the video. And then minute after minute, the officers, you can see it on the video that was just released recently, the officers just stand around and look at him, and literally at one point an officer sits on the hood of the car while Tamir is literally bleeding to death. And he lived for 16 more hours. And after they shot him, the officers literally treated him like he was roadkill. I was so angry yesterday watching it that I was in my office. I literally had to close the door of my office, and I cried. I was just furious because his sister, who was just 2 years older than him, but really saw herself as his big sister.
Right.
She was in the bath for 2 minutes. She went to go use the bathroom, and he gets shot while she's in the bathroom. And you can see her on this new video. She comes running like a woman possessed, because she sees what's happened. And the officer literally tackles his sister, and they handcuff her and put her in the back of the police car, and they leave her there literally while she's talked about this publicly. She's looking out of the window at her brother dying on the ground. And it's an absurd case. It's a grave injustice. And if the officer who choked and killed Eric Garner, if he had not been let off without ever even going to trial, I would tell you this case is definitely going to go to trial, and somebody's definitely going to get in trouble for this. But I don't know anymore, man. I have lost so much confidence in our justice system, man. Like, it frightened me. The mayor of Cleveland came out and said he doesn't trust the attorney general or the people who were investigating the case. He doesn't trust them to do a good job.
Now that's bad.
So all of a sudden, I'm thinking, well, who's supposed to do a good job then?
Yeah.
And so it is a broken system, and it's our job as people who just love people. You don't have to love God. You just love people. If you love kids, it's worth saying, hey, this isn't right. And we need to figure out ways to make improvements such that these things don't happen. And there are too many cases like this, man.
Yeah. I would love your, just kind of your thoughts on this. And this is a massive question, but obviously, man, there's been a lot of protests and that kind of thing, and I think what I'm not seeing enough of is just answers to how we really need to fix this. I'm seeing some of it, but I feel like that I think people need to kind of understand what do we need to work towards in order to kind of make this situation right, man. Like I said, it's a massive question, but just 2 or 3 things, man, you think.
Yeah. Well, see, here's the good. If there is some good news, the good news is that there are probably, and I mean this literally, there are probably 25 different things that could really help make not just people safer, but police safer.
Yep.
And I have a cousin who's a police officer, and we literally have almost fallen out over some of the things that are going on right now. And because he can only see through the eyes of being an officer, and I can't see the world like he sees it.
Yep.
And so my desire is just for a safer, more equitable society where police officers and people can function in a way without violence whenever necessary. And I know in our society we have literally more guns in our country than we have people, and so it's always going to be dangerous for police and for people. But there are probably 25 different things that can happen. The good news is some of them are really achievable. And what really frightens people and discourages them is when they think that there's only one solution and there's no way it's ever going to get done. And I understand that temptation, but we have to take a step back and say, okay, let's break this down into small bits. Like I have an example. There was a young man on New Year's Day in Savannah, Georgia, who was suffering with mental illness, and he was a college student in Savannah, a successful college student, and an employed guy, a sharp, good guy who had mental illness, and he was clearly having some type of manic episode. His girlfriend calls the police. She tells them that he needs to go to the hospital. She gives them, and this is in the police report, she gives them medication. Well, they don't take him to the hospital, and they don't give him his medication. They take him to the police department. This is just on New Year's Day. They take him to the police department, and some period in time, they kill him there in the police department.
Wow.
He dies. And they're not releasing the videos from the police department. They're not releasing the autopsy report. We don't know anything about the injuries that he received. All we know is he wasn't injured when he got there, and he ended up dying there in the police department. And one thing that could be done immediately, and this is for the safety of police officers and people with mental illness, is there has to be a separate protocol on how you assess and manage and handle people who are having manic episodes or some type of lapse based on mental illness. In fact, most Caucasians who are killed by police are mentally ill and homeless.
Wow.
So you see every year over 100 primarily white men, particularly white homeless men, but almost all of them have some variety of mental illness, are killed in custody or in some encounter with police. But police are not prepared or trained. They don't necessarily even have the equipment to handle someone with such an illness. But if you travel anywhere around the world, they have protocols for this, where it is a rare occurrence where any unarmed citizen in most developed countries is ever killed by police. And certainly, I kid you not, I have friends who live in places like London and Switzerland. There would be riots if an unarmed mentally ill person was killed by police in those countries. And it's an unheard of occurrence. And it just doesn't happen. And so, like, something we should all be able to agree on across all race, all religion, is police need to be better prepared, have a new set of protocols for how they handle cases of mental illness. And that's something we can agree on. Now, some people have waned on the idea of body cameras. And for a lot of different people say, well, I don't like the idea of police having cameras on us at all times. And then what really happened is when Eric Garner was killed and it was on camera, what happened is people just threw the baby out with the bathwater and said, cameras mean nothing. But right now, like, I would do anything if a camera filmed what happened between Darren Wilson and Mike Brown.
Right.
Everybody would love for there to be a video of that, not to be a voyeur. But I think that would settle everything.
Yeah.
Either it happened a certain way or it didn't.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't mean that justice is going to happen.
But that's a different issue.
But at least you have an account.
Right.
Because here's what I know. If Eric Garner, if that had not been on film, we'd never even know his name.
Right.
The only reason you and I know who Eric Garner is because it was filmed. It wasn't because people are killed by police regularly.
Yeah.
But the only reason we know about Tamir Rice, yes, is because he was 12, but because there's this video that is so ugly and so compelling that it makes the story known. And so the issue of body cameras, several studies, Cambridge University actually did a huge study which found that people behave differently when they see police with body cameras. And so police behave differently. They tend to be, like, a lot of times, and I don't even mean this as an offense to officers, but officers can be verbally abusive to people. And when they wear their body cameras, they tend not to do that. But not only that, people tend to be less abusive toward officers when they know they're being filmed. This is what the studies have shown.
Interesting.
And so there are drawbacks, and there are real issues of systems. There was a young brother who was killed in Utah, and the officer was wearing a body camera that said he forgot to turn it on. And you see these weird things. So we're years away from it being a system that works well, but it shouldn't be something that we throw out. And I still think that's something, but officers may not love the idea. I think it's something that we could agree on, something that we could improve and tweak that works. And it's just one by one saying, okay, let's tackle this one bite-sized issue at a time. Like the last one I would say is there should be laws that require police to immediately take reports when police shoot and kill somebody. There should be a report that's made from the officer involved right away, and that report should be public right away, and then it should be reported to a national database right away. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Well, again, while police may not love it, that's not unfair to police. It's not unfair to citizens. It's great for everybody for that to happen. And those are the things that we could fight for bit by. On their own, none of those things make a big difference. But if you start to get 5 of those things or 10 of those things done, you can make a significant difference.
It's good. That's good, bro. That's real good.
Yeah, man.
That's good. I love that, man. Love that, man. Love your heart, man. Shaun, I just want to thank you for this, man. Want to encourage everybody. Make sure you get Shaun's new book, The Power 100. Get your life goals situation in order.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's important, man. It's important, man. I guess, man, just kind of a last question, just to kind of tie back in. That what is the biggest goal you have right now, man, for yourself and for your family, man?
Man, I tell you, I have like a real dad husbandly type of goal right now. It is like completely uncool, but my family and I, we've bounced around a whole lot over the past couple of years, and we don't even necessarily mind moving, but it hasn't been incredibly stable. Literally, we've lived in New York, Georgia, California, South Africa, all in the past 3 years, and even we lived in 2 places in New York and 2 places in California. I mean, we've moved a lot, man, and so as practical as it sounds, right now, a huge part of my daily life, and it's something that people will never see, and there's going to be no reward for it or anything like that. I am really working hard to get my family in a position where we're stable financially, we're stable with our location. My oldest girls are in middle school and high school, and they kind of want to dig in and make some friends that they can keep and stick with and things like that. And so for me right now, it's a completely unsexy thing, but I'm really working hard on trying to get us in a stable, consistent place and trying to get some roots, man. I don't know where that's going to be. I mean, we're looking at several locations and things to think about, but we're definitely going to make some decisions on that soon for sure.
That's good, man. It may not be no reward in the general public, man, but there's going to be a reward with your family and even in heaven, man, because, being a good dad and a husband, top priority, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad to connect with you, man, and glad we could just chop it up for a few minutes.
Absolutely, man. It was just a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Y'all make sure y'all follow him. Your Twitter is just straight Shaun King, Shaun with an AU in the middle. What's the Facebook and the websites too, man?
You can go to Shaun King on Facebook, Shaun King on Instagram, Shaun King on Twitter, and then we have a cool website for the book. It's called The 100 Book. That's 100, the100book.com, and you can see all the different places you can get it and pick it up online, offline, and I hope people will check it out for sure, man.
That's it, man. Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. Talk soon. Take care.
On the Wade Radio Show. On the Wade Radio. On the Wade Radio Show. Where it's much more than music, it's ministry.